Welcome to the Empire State Trail Weekly Update, your briefing for folks who use and care about the Erie Canalway and Empire State Trail. Each week we'll look at conditions, construction, and community news from across the Erie Canal and Hudson River corridors. This is the update for March 29th through April 4th, 2026. The trail is open everywhere, but it has been cold. The precipitation map for the last 7 days shows it has been fairly dry, so hopefully the trail is drying up in your area. There has been a report of flooded conditions near Lyons, between Lyons and Clyde. So unless you can see the surface of the trail, don't ride through the water, as you have no idea how deep the water might be, especially along the canal. A bank could be washed out and you could find yourself swimming. Remember that saying, turn around, don't drown, and it applies to bicycles too. In terms of trail closures, there's been no changes. There's still got the LaSalle Park closure in Buffalo where you have to use the city streets. Out in the Gates area, there's a short detour around the trail work there. Haven't seen any notices that trail work's been done. There is I-490 here, a bridge over the trail is going to be starting to work on in April, and you're going to see probably some detours there, or at least flagmen. Be on the lookout for that. And then when you get out to the Durhamville area, there's been a trail closure just around the aqueduct there. It's a short street detour. There should be finishing up work on Lock 21 there, but you can always take the Route 46 bypass there. Just follow local detours. And that's all we have for trail closures and notices right now. Parks and Trails New York is offering what they call an immersive experience study tour for those planners, organizers, and advocates who want to take a deep dive into trail planning and use. The Cycle Western New York is set for June 15 to 17, and that is a Monday to a Wednesday, and the ride will be from Buffalo to Rochester. The goal is to get out there on the Erie Canalway for a ride, meet local leaders, and gain ideas that you can apply to your local efforts. The ride is fully supported, runs about 35 to 50 miles a day. They're looking for about 15 to 18 riders, no larger than 18. And the cost is $1,700 for a 3-day, 2-night tour, which includes meals, accommodations, sag wagon, and more. And you can find out more on the page here about the Empire State Study Tour. Obviously at that price, it's going to be not for everybody, but it looks like great fun. When we have people stop at the Hideaway, I always ask them how they're enjoying their trip along the canal. And they see my collection of canal-related stuff, study guides and maps and everything, and they ask, what is the Erie Canal? What's it all about? Well, what's your knowledge of New York State's canals? Can you pick out a bit of the 1825 canal in the woods? And do you wonder what it's all about? Do you know that there were 3 versions or generations of the Erie Canal? Do you even care and feel that the canal is just a nice water feature? And what is all the fuss? Well, I think your rides along the Erie Canalway will be greatly enhanced if you have some understanding of what version of the Erie you're riding alongside, why it was built, how it was used, and why it was or was not continued into the next generation. So we'll give you some basic knowledge you can take along with you and amaze your friends and bore your family. So to begin with, there are 3 generations of the Erie. Yeah, okay, there is some nuance to the statement, as with everything about the canal, but let's just say there are 3 main generations, and let's cover the first 2 in this report. The first canal. This is the canal you learn about in grade school and hear all about in the song 15 miles along the Erie Canal, and Low Bridge, everybody down, and all that. Construction began in 1817, and by 1820, the first section of the canal was in use between Montezuma and Utica. This canal has been called the Great Western Canal, the Erie Canal, Clinton's Ditch, or Clinton's Folly. The entire canal from Buffalo to Albany was ready for use by October 1825, which is why you saw a lot of Erie Canal 200 in 2025. What you need to know for your ride is that you will not see any of this canal on your ride unless you go looking for it. In the east and the west, it was built over by later generations of the Erie. You can find nice chunks of the first canal in central New York, but you will never ride along it on the Canalway Trail. Never. The original canal was 4 feet deep and 40 feet wide. And here's my handy little drawing, skillfully interpreted for you, showing 40 foot wide. This is all to scale. So this is 4 feet deep, 40 feet wide, 10 foot wide towpath. Clinton's Ditch. Boats could carry 50 to 75 tons. Canal geeks like to call this a contour canal because it was built in a manner that followed the contour of the land. And here's another helpful visual aid. So here we got a river over here, and this is nowhere in particular, it's just something I made up. We got a drumlin here, some wet areas here. So when they came along to build their canal, they just picked one elevation. They were just going to follow that elevation as long as they could, and they would use any bit of highland. So you can see the red line here. Here's my contour canal. It's following contour 395. That's the height they picked. And they're going to use this hillside here. They're going to dig into the hillside, use that for a bit of canal. They're going to come across here. And this really is how winding and twisting it could have been, especially in central New York with all the drumlins. So here they follow the drumlin down until they find they're close to this other hillside, and they jump across, and then they follow this hillside. So we're just following the contour of the land. And this is, again, Clinton's Ditch, 1817, and it was used to 1862. The enlarged canal was 7 feet deep and 70 feet wide. And here's my comparison here. So the enlarged canal. My guy's a little tall, I think, but it's just 7 feet deep, 70 feet wide. Construction began on this one in 1836 and went up through 1862. And it took almost 30 years to complete it. But it also brought in a lot of improvements. The big change was how they constructed it and how it was built, much like we build highways today with the cut and fill method. So here we have the enlarged canal. So if you remember, the other canal went twisting around, following the contours of the land. Well, this was built in the manner of a Telford. He was the engineer who perfected this in England. So what they did is they picked 405. That's the elevation they're going to follow. They're going to come through. They're going to cut through this drumlin here. They're going to cut through this drumlin here. They're going to use the cut here to fill in this little valley here and this little area here. And they're just going to straighten it all out. So you can imagine how much easier this was to get a boat through, rather than having all those twists and bends and everything else. So this is the enlarged canal that you're riding along today. This was in use from 1862. Earlier, actually. There were some sections in use in the early 1840s, but they considered it finished in 1862, and this was in use up until 1917. So you can think of this like a farm lane. So here we have the farmer's wagon, and he's just following the easiest way to go. You can find these still out in the country. You wonder why they're twisting and turning so much. And then you have your modern superhighway or your modern road that they just straightened it all out, and they just go blasting straight through, and like a modern roadway. So you have your contour canal and your cut and fill canal. So here's a fun fact. The packet boats, which were the stagecoaches of the water, were used on the first canal, Clinton's Ditch, and not the enlarged. We don't even have a photo of a packet boat in use on Clinton's Ditch. All we have is paintings and prints. The age of the packet, basically 1820 to 1850, was over by the time the enlarged canal was finished. The railroads had taken all that business and made it possible to travel between Albany and Buffalo in hours instead of days. So here we have just a postcard showing a representation of a packet boat passing through a lock. And you can tell this is a single lock chamber, which they had on the Clinton's Ditch. They did not have the double chambers that we see today on the enlarged canal. Here's a picture of a boat on the Black River Canal, which was built to the Clinton's Ditch specifications. So the boats were, 15 feet wide and about 80 feet long. So much smaller, you can see. But if you go up the Black River Canal system, or some on the Genesee Valley Greenway, and you see the locks here, you'll notice that they're much smaller than the enlarged locks. Here's a boat on the Black River. We have pictures of this because the Black River was still in use when photography came around in the late 1800s. So we do have pictures of boats being used and the size of the boats that would have been used on the Clinton's Ditch, but no packet boats. Here's the church in Port Byron. This is now the Samuel Center. And this arch here is still visible behind the church. So this shed here was built right on top of the arch. So it kind of protected this, I guess. But this arch you can still see there, and the Canal Society of New York State is making this into a little pocket park. This is now the Samuel Center, which is the archives for the Canal Society of New York State. Here's a bit of the Clinton's Ditch and Schoharie Crossing. And you can see the little deck here. Here's the lock that was filled in. This is a guard lock that went out into the Schoharie River, or Schoharie Creek. And you can still see this. This is one of the spots in New York State where you can still see a bit of the Clinton's Ditch. And the enlarged canal is over here, so they saved this as a feeder. Here's a late representation. This is Len Tentillo's painting of the packet boat crossing the river, the Seneca River at Montezuma. So one time this would have been the end of the canal in 1820. Boats would have been coming down here, and they could have gone out into the Seneca River and headed south into the Finger Lakes. So this is an artist interpretation of a lot of useful information from surveys of boats that are in the bottom of the lake right now. Here's the bridge. And if you go to Montezuma, you can still see this towpath. You can still see this canal. Not like this. You have to use a lot of imagination. This is all gone. The river's still there. And you can still find some wooden piers in the park. And they have some nice signage there to show you this. So there's a lot of the Clinton's Ditch still visible in the Montezuma Heritage Park. And this is a nice series of postcards of Lockport, New York. You got the 1835 representation of what was originally built. And you can see you got packet boats down here. And small staircase of locks. See the church steeples. Pretty neat. And then you have side by side, you have the 1910 version. So they're highlighting the difference between the two. So you have your 1825. And then you have your 1862 version of the enlarged. Still a staircase, and they just made it bigger, wider. They've added this bridge here, so that's a really neat. And then you have there's a lot of them, obviously. Here's a real photo postcard showing the freight boats heading through the locks. And then you have your side by side with your barge canal locks. So now you have the modern day barge canal locks, the flight of 2 here instead of 5, and then they're using the old flight of 5 as a bypass. So this is all still there. You can still see this. There is a statuary here, really neat, of the lock tenders statuary. You can sit down and have your picture taken with them. It's a real cool place to visit. Hopefully you do that. And while you're in Lockport, make sure you go over and see the deep cut, where they had to blast through a ridge to connect Lake Erie water to basically the central part of New York State to feed water into the canal system. So here we have a picture of the deep cut. We got the towpath over here. Here's the deep cut. You can tell the amount of blasting they had to do. Here's the towpath. This here is a place where they can raise up the boards, I think, and there's a little staircase in below it in case a mule falls into the water. They can bring the mule here, then they can lift up the boards and get the mule, have him walk up and get out of the water, because there's no other way to get him out of the water there. And then this was all blown out again by the building of the barge canal. So here's your towpath over here. And you don't ride along this. You're over here on the roadway. Or I think there's a trail there now. But this is the deep cut, so there's no more dramatic place to see the differences in the various canal versions than here at the deep cut. And as I said, the photographs you see of boats on the canal are of the enlarged canal, because postcards came very popular at the late 1800s, early 1900s. Real photo postcards came out. This is probably a real photo that was colorized. They would take a real black and white photo, then they would make notes, green, whatnot, and they would send these back over to Germany, and they would get colorized, and then they would print them out. So they look kind of like a drawing, but they're probably based on an actual photograph. But here we have the Erie Canal in Durhamville. We have two enlarged boats here. These would have been 98 feet long and 17 feet wide. Two are hitched together here. Between the two of them here, they could carry about 400 tons of goods. You can see the size of it. And let's go to, we have this one here, which is probably the most famous picture ever used. It's the guy tailing off the mule. So they carried the mules in the front stable, and they would bring them off, and then they would take that would be a fresh mule. They would take them off, and then they would take the mules that had been working, and they would put them onto the stable. You can see this young man here standing next to the boat. So it gives you a size of the boat that we're talking about on the enlarged canal. So when you're riding around those enlarged canal locks, this is what you should be thinking about. And if you want to take a ride on the enlarged canal, head over to Camillus Park, the Liz and Dave Beebe Camillus Erie Canal Park, where you can take a mile-long boat ride on the enlarged canal. This would have been 70 feet wide. Here you have your towpath over here. A lot of growth over here. You wouldn't have had all this growth here during the days of when the canal was active because of tree roots and everything growing into the canal. They didn't want stuff, trees toppling over into the canal. But it's a very nice place to go, get a sense of what the canal was like. And they offer them, I think, Wednesdays and Sunday afternoons. So check out their website and head over to Camillus for a ride on the enlarged Erie Canal. The Canal Clean Sweep is now just a few weeks away on the weekend of April 17 to 19. The Clean Sweep is a great way to give back to the trail system and clean up after the winter mess. You can check out the map for a Clean Sweep event near you, or you can create one of your own and invite your friends and family to take part. The National Historic Marker Weekend is set for April 24 to 26, and the William G. Pomeroy Foundation is hosting a marker cleanup event for that weekend. You can go over to their website and check out more to learn how to clean markers correctly and find an event near you. Registration is still open for the Cycle the Erie Canal and Cycle the Hudson Valley group rides, which are hosted by Parks and Trails New York. But the early registration window is coming to a close, so if you're thinking about it, you may want to act soon. The Erie Canal ride will take place over the week of July 11th and 19th, and the Hudson Valley ride is set for August 3 through 8. And that's it for this week's Empire State Trail Weekly. And remember to be careful on your early season ride and look out for those piles of grit in the corners and intersections. They'll send you for a tumble. Leave your questions and comments below. Please note that this is an independent weekly update and is not affiliated with New York State, the Canal Corporation, or any official trail agency. Information is based on publicly available sources and rider reports. Remember to give this a like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.